Technology, isn't it great?
Yeah, all right, so I am good to go. So in terms of, I guess, a little bit of background, first of all, I just want to say thank you to OLT for being having the interest or the vision, at least, in trying to raise the profile of the conversation around data and analytics in education, which is one of obviously, the purpose of this report. And the benefit, at least, of having this conversation initiated by OLT, I think, signals to organizations, not just within Australia. I've had quite a few folks in other areas that have referenced the value of seeing divisions or departments from government agencies that are taking a serious eye on the competitive dimensions of analytics in learning. So, by way of background, the organization that carried out the writing of the report is the Society for Learning Analytics Research, and that's an organization that was created, if you will, officially about 2 years ago, but more unofficially, it's been part of a group that's been around for probably about almost 5 years now. And so as a result, the group basically has an initiative or a series of initiatives around researching the way in which learning analytics are impacting education. And that's primarily at the higher education level, but we do have representation in both corporate and K-12. Organization then primarily comprised of researchers, research discipline around those kinds of assertions, and there needed to be a space for researchers that cared about that kind of activity to be able to question that or to be able to really dive into what was happening behind the algorithm so that we could dialogue meaningfully about a range of issues. It could be around the power of the decisions that we make educationally. It could be around does an algorithm that works well for a school system, let's say in the middle of Sydney, is that going to produce similar results when you're in remote or locations that have a different student profile or a different mix of students and so on. That's essentially what we're trying to do with SOLAR. And on that note, I'll throw it back to Grace to talk about the report.
Great. Thanks, George. We'll come back to you in about after Shirley and I talk. So you can pull over the side of the road and keep driving. We'll come back in about 20, 30 minutes to you.
Okay, no problem.
Great. Thank you. Can I have the slides up, please? Great. Thank you. Can I get the slides on the computer? No. That's all right. So as George said, and you do have the report that's in your folders, the little brochure. What we actually wanted to do was we wanted to look at different systems that were using analytics for a greater benefit, where education, as from a number of people who have been speaking, there are a number of difficulties around getting the data of what we're doing and how we're doing, structuring, how it lives within the systems. And if you didn't get a chance to go to the learning analytics sessions yesterday, because it was standing room, sitting room only, Phil Long from the University of Queensland. Phil, where are you? He's done an excellent presentation of the difficulties in the architecture that's needed to integrate all of the different systems, and those slides are going to be available. And I would ask you to all go through them and to have conversations with your senior management about the difficulties of that data integration of what we're doing, and we'll talk more about that. Essentially, we do know what we're talking about. The idea of learning analytics is really around making real-time change during the learning process. It's not the delay that we've had in the past. So it's not the delay that we've had with the academics of after the fact of looking at. It's trying to do things in real time. And that's why it's so critical to get the data out of those learning management systems, which as an institution of trying to aggregate that becomes extremely difficult because everything's built on a single unit subject basis, and how we take that and how we integrate that's proving to be one of the greatest barriers we have for institutional application of learning analytics. But the intent is that really the institution becomes more intentional about what we want to do, and the questions around where, again, Gregor Kennedy was mentioning about sense making. The critical issue is asking the right question. And it's not to be driven by the vendor. It is to be driven from an educational point of view. The whole intention is we are trying to improve outcomes for students from an evidence base, that we know if we do things in a certain way, it has this impact on the students, and we're able to see those impacts and to make those changes in real time. So what Beverly was showing from Deakin Sync and what it was trying to show of giving feedback back to students. The greatest challenge students mention about their learning is timely feedback. Whether it's on campus, online, it doesn't matter. It's getting information back to them about how they're doing themselves. Students do want to know how they're doing in comparison with everybody else. They want to know, are they doing okay? It isn't a focus on just those that's struggling, but it's for all students. Students do want to know how they're doing and how they're coping with what's going on. Now, one of the things that's in the slide, and this comes from Open University in the UK, and as part of doing this paper, there was a webinar series where we had 8 different weekly webinars from a variety of people from around the world talking about different things about analytics. And one of the things as part of this consultation was Open University in the UK and their key elements of a systemic institutional strategy. And so in universities, the data collection and analytic processes are often very far removed from the actual learning context of that student in that unit and that subject at that time. And in order to provide actionable outcomes, we need to be able to get it more finely grained, we need it nuanced, we need to pull it in, and what can we do? So we need short-term gains, we need to be able to pull everything in from all of the different systems. And I'm sure from all of you who've been working at your many institutions, and as Jennifer Heath was mentioning yesterday about the different committees and structures, we know that data is power. And information is power, and not everybody likes to share that. They like to keep that. So we have different system storage where you've got student management systems, you've got financial systems, you've got your web analytics systems, you've got your learning management systems. And many universities are in the process of building data warehouses and trying to integrate all of those data, which is what Phil was talking about yesterday afternoon, and showing how they all come together and how they all link. And so showing how they all come together with the intention is about getting the right data, answering the right question to the right people to make the right decisions for those students. And so looking at focusing on those learning outcomes, looking at focusing on what's happening, looking at what's coming around from an evaluation framework, knowing what's coming so that the interventions that you're taking are the ones that are able to make a change. So one of the biggest difficulties around is the ability to be able to prove causation or correlation. To be able to say, if we do this, then that happens because of that. And that causation is huge. And even the examples where people showed, and a lot of people showed the Signals project out of Purdue of what's happening, and they were the 4 runners of that. There has been some further follow-up on that and some further statistical analysis, and it's actually showing that some of the assumptions that they made are not statistically sound. That the correlation, if you remove and you change, putting in a bar of chocolate for taking the foundation course, exactly the same effect happens. So we have to be very careful. Do we know that prior success leads to future success? Yes. In order for students to continue, they need to pass. If they don't pass, they won't continue. So we do know around those strategies, and we do know it is about getting that information and getting that, and it's very strongly around coming from a research perspective, which is happening around understanding that universities are in the business of education, and Beverly's nice little slide at the end with the little dollar bill and selling, really it is. There is competition, and it is about money. It is trying to keep students in, and that's what universities are looking at, and that's what the senior management is looking at. And so being able to become aware of who your students are, what they are, and how you can keep them and how you can keep them happy is going to be even greater than it ever has been before. And this slide as well, as I really love this, and this is from Mike Timms from ACER, and again as part of the webinar series, talking about the challenges of learning analytics. Well, first of all, as we've said, the data comes in from multiple sources. You've got to then take it and sort it of what you're going to do. You're going to have to arrange it so that it actually tells you a meaningful story. And I love Gregor's comments about sense making. It is about making sense. There's a lot of white noise out there with the data, with what you're chemming. And so being able to have that visualization of what you want becomes critical. And that's where vendors are really, really jumping in to the learning analytics space. They're saying they've got the dashboard for you. They've got the answer. They haven't asked you what your question is, but they've got the answer for you. So you've got to be very, very careful that you frame the questions, what it is that you want to know, and why is it important to know that. And again, from Deb West, when she was talking yesterday about the ethics, if you're not going to do anything and you gather a lot of information, what is your ethical and moral responsibility of the student if you know that the student's going to fail based on all of the activity that's coming, based on all of your modeling? Should you either advise the student to withdraw and drop out without financial penalty, or do you take their money knowing that there is a 90% likelihood that they're going to fail? What becomes the onus on you? So don't ask questions you're not going to act on once you have the answers. So to be very, very careful about what you're doing there with what's going on with that data. And so it is about evaluating impact. It is about looking at student success. It is about looking at all of those different drivers that are coming in. It is about adding value, sharing knowledge, better student retention of what's coming in. So we do talk about retention a lot, and a lot of times within institutions, that retention, that word has a different meaning and a different definition. So one of the things is being very clear about it. And retention in this aspect is about keeping the student and having them re-enroll and continue in their course to be able to do it. So as part of this study that we did, there were a number of case studies, and I know from all of the pre-reading and everything that Belinda was saying yesterday, of course everybody read everything that was in, and you've gone through and you have all the details of the case studies. Looking at those systemic, and that was just a sample of looking at what we're doing. So the critical challenges, and the critical challenges come from all of them. It is the very, very same, and it's nothing surprising that we do know. In order to be successful, as I've said, asking the right questions, you need to get data in the hands of those who can actually make decisions and can change. It is very much a capabilities and skills shortage. It's not a lack of statistical modeling. Lots of modeling, lots of data mining, lots of data questions. It's somebody sitting with them and asking the pedagogical question of what it is you want to know and why, and having to keep running and moving those different things. And having somebody with that understanding of education and teaching, and to being able to work with the statistical people and moving. And I can speak that way coming from a mathematics statistics background, and having taught for many, many years, having that link to be able to go and actually sit in with your data people and actually say, when you crunch it, that doesn't make sense. That's not, so something's wrong in the model, something's coming. Here's what I want to know, here's what to come. It is about identifying scalable options. For a lot of institutions, it may require a change of infrastructure. It may require a change of learning management system, dare I say it, how difficult that is because of the nature of the structure of it. It may require a change of your student administration system. It may require simply bridging and some gaps to allow that data to talk to each other and what it can do. And one of the strong things is that, and what came out from all of the case studies and from all of the things that we looked at, was it's actually in coming together as a group and joining collaboratively and working together collaboratively with vendors to say, we've got 10, 20, 30 universities, we've got these different learning management systems, but this question is the same. How can we work together to solve it? And to not have the vendor pick university off one at a time, to be able to say, oh, this is specific just for you. So if you have people, not people within, doing Blackboard, a lot of people within Moodle, people moving toward and investigating Canvas, coming out of Instructure, looking at different things coming out of Oracle. It could be called SAP. They like to use the term SAP, but I call them SAP. And coming in with what you're doing together. And that is one of the very nice things about the New South Wales Learning Analytics Group, which is the only state-based learning analytics working group in Australia at present. And it has a number of universities in New South Wales who are looking at doing exactly that. What are the common questions we're trying to address? What's coming on? And we can do some of those things at a more national level as well. It does become signing MOUs, it does become understanding, but we need to use our collective power better than we are and not having the vendors driving this decision of how we need to go. Come back. Understand the value. There's lots of data. It's raining data. It's coming out. It is about, as I've said, making sense of that and asking the right question. And it is around what we were saying of trying to move, and what's in the report is looking at a learning analytics sophistication model, looking at a maturity model. And we do have, from OLT, 2 strategic projects in learning analytics, one led by Deb West from Charles Darwin, and one led by Shane Dawson from UniSA. And part of that is trying to get a sense of where we all are, how are we positioning, moving along that learning analytics framework, moving from those very small pockets of innovation. Most of the learning analytics that's happening, or happening and have happened successfully, have been at the unit basis, very, very small scale, within one unit, one course, make an impact on those students, a lot looking at risk. So it's being able to move along that line and being able to move along that trajectory into more maturity and moving around from not what do we want to know, what should we know, and what systems do we need to put in place in the future to be able to move forward to them. So one of the things that we had said was that we had suggestions about moving forward, and I know, again, that there's nothing new. Analytics can drive substantial gains in productivity. It's been shown in other industries. It's very much so in the health industry and consumer in marketing. Within the educational context, this actually relates to student learning gains and improvements in program delivery, curriculum design, efficiency. So one of the suggestions was, again, to come together nationally. So whether we have a task force, whether we have some support, where we actually have stakeholders from government, higher education, commercial vendors, ICT, looking at how we can dilute these current barriers of the data talking to each other, looking at the barriers we're having of extracting data out of our learning management systems. So not being told that it's held in this little black box, and if you buy this special analytic package, then it's going to run the reports and do everything that you need it to do. We actually need the data ourselves to be able to look at it with what you're doing. So, and it does become around looking at how we can share, looking at the right questions, asking all of those sorts of things. We do need to leverage existing strategies and frameworks of looking at what's coming around. So the Australian government is putting in big data strategies. We have to make sure that education is in there as well and looking at what's coming around. And part of that, and a part of that that's coming from the Strategic Commission projects, is looking at the questions, looking at the data, what are we capturing, where are the collection points, how is it coming through? Privacy and ethics, there's no question that is a major thing. And it is a no question that we are actually treating this as research, and that yes, it does have to go through ethics approval within universities, but what we can do is we can help those ethics committees understand what it is we're asking about, and how can we do it, and how can we move forward with that, and not to have every single person at every single institution come up against the same barrier of some people not quite understanding of how this data is shaped, what we're doing with it, how are we de-identifying it, what are we going to do, where is it stored, how is it coming along. So assisting in making guidelines that can work across all of those institutions, looking around those ethical points of view. And any change happens, it doesn't matter, leadership. Leadership is critical. It has to be that the leadership actually understands what it is, how we're moving at, looking at the high priority. And so in essence, it is actually, our suggestion is we actually need a leadership program. We need to teach our leaders what it is we're talking about when we're talking about analytics and making decisions based on the student learning data of what's coming, and having that work together of coming around. And there's no question, again, the skills and capability shortages. So lots of data scientists, lots of learning scientists, lots of educational data mining. So the Society for Learning Analytics Research is a very strong collaborative partner with the International Educational Data Mining Society. And as George had mentioned earlier, one of the things that we're having is our second Learning Analytics Summer Institute, and this is really focused a lot on doctoral students. It's actually growing our research community. It's our people around understanding what we're talking about with learning analytics, what it is. It is around developing a learning analytics master's program, which is being developed. Solar is very much about open source, making everything open and available, and being able to do that around with the programs and around with training. And it is around working with a number of organizations, and the Bill and Melinda Gates organization have been very supportive to Solar around developing some of the curriculum, looking at some of the analysis around with MOOC data, and about looking at different programs coming together around the summer institutes and looking at how we can move them as well. So there are a number of global organizations that Australian universities are linked into and are making connections with, and just to continue those connections and to keep working on the global scale. And it really is about moving beyond teaching only data analytic techniques and developing skills on holistic sense making and gaining actionable insight from analytics. So that's it for me on the report. You have the report. We're going to have some more questions, and Shirley is going to talk about UTS, what they've done with their strategy, and a little bit more about the Strategic Commission project. Thank you.